Alright, YouTube, it's time for another video on this whole matter of the police killings because there's been you could call it funny development here. I'll put the link in the description as always. Chicopee man faces charges for put wings on pigs Facebook post. Apparently, this person simply posted those 4 words, exactly in quotations, put wings on pigs. As a result, somebody on Facebook, one of his friends, one of his neighbors or whatever, reported that to police and they are charging him with making a criminal threat. Now, it boggles the mind as to why they would think that that actually, in any court in the land, is not going to get thrown out. Obviously, the charge that they're laying against him is probably not going to stand up. There's no further context there. He's not saying, oh, well, yeah, killing cops is fun. 420 blaze it every day, man. Apparently they didn't raid his house and find some murder manifesto or something like that. So I think it goes to quite a stretch of the imagination to think that any judge isn't going to throw this out. But I think this is indicative of a larger issue, which is the fact that the police in this country apparently have begun to, as I said before, look at citizens more as a potential threat than as people to be protected and served. And I said that the opposite is also true. A lot of citizens in this country, right or wrong, feel that the police no longer really protect anybody but themselves. And as a result, both sides, again, look at one another less as humans or Americans, but more as machines, stereotype sort of homogenized groups. That's the larger problem that's at play here. I actually just got done writing a short work. It's about 50, well, it's technically 52 pages, but really 50 pages long. Sort of on this topic about how the United States has, and the Western world at large, has unfortunately seen its liberty erode because it has adopted the practices, essentially, of the same groups that it has spent a great deal of time fighting over the last century, the Nazis, communists, the Soviets basically, essentially, and Islamofascists, and that each time that we end up fighting one of these groups, and it appears to be trying to autoplay a video here. Just a sec. The page reloads itself, apparently. Huh, well, that's quite strange. Screw you. I don't even like Boston. Sorry, Boston folks. I don't like cities. But anyway, essentially, any time the United States has gone to war with or struggled against one of these totalitarian ideologies, it has ended up adopting many of the strategies similar to those ideologies as it has won the struggle. Essentially, the Nazis lost the physical war, but their ideology lived on, largely because of things like Operation Paperclip. Of course, we imported the best and brightest from the Nazi regime to come over and labor away making atomic weapons and space travel and stuff. When the Soviet Union fell, it was only after a protracted period during the Cold War at which we underwent the same sort of surveillance and propaganda that the Soviets had. And now in this age of Islamofascism and it's increasingly being exported into the umbrella term of domestic terrorism, unfortunately what we appear to be doing is making the same mistakes that we've made before, where we're waging proxy wars using militant groups, which didn't work well before and won't work well now. We armed and funded essentially what became the rudiments of Al-Qaeda, including Osama bin Laden, and look how that turned out. And we have seen our liberty slowly eroded as the result. And what you've seen replace liberty largely is paranoia. People are paranoid towards the police are paranoid towards the people, the government's paranoid, which is why they're trying to crack down right now on so-called enhanced body armor. And I bet most people here haven't even heard about that bill. It's essentially the same as California's, only to be implemented nationally. Thankfully, I don't think it's going to pass the House. They might be able to bundle it in somewhere, but it's unlikely to actually pass. But yeah, the freedom in this country and in the Western world at large has eroded, and it's gotten to the point now where political movements and individuals who are labeled by the mainstream media and mainstream political parties as fringe or absurdist or strange and amusing have begun to make more sense than the mainstream parties and the mainstream media itself. The same groups that they largely ignored or made fun of, they now find replacing them as the result of the fact that the mainstream parties are seen as largely corrupt. They're seen as oppressive. They're seen as suppressive of views that they themselves do not like, leading to attempts right now to reform our electoral law in this country. And elsewhere as well. UKIP's doing the same in Britain. You've got Front National, Golden Dawn, Boskurt, all these different groups, secular groups, green movements, all vying basically for the same goal. They have different ultimate beliefs, but they all have the same goal, which is they want the legitimacy of their own ideas to be respected. And we've seen a great deal of our liberty eroding, and this is probably the best case that I can possibly give for that. You have a person who has made a post that no reasonable, sane individual would possibly consider threatening. It is 4 words long and in quotations. It has no further context. It's not directed at anybody. It wasn't posted on a police department Facebook page. It was posted on his own profile. And now he's being charged, essentially, with making a criminal threat. Again, no reasonable person would find this threatening. And whoever reported him, they must be way out in left field to have found this to be any sort of credible threat, because it's clearly not. The judge will probably laugh this out of court, as well they should when it does end up going forward. But apparently they're refusing to drop charges, even though anybody with half a working brain could tell you that you can't just charge somebody with a threat when they haven't actually threatened anybody. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever. No sane individual would find this threatening. And that is simply a symptom of the larger problem. The larger problem is statism is like a cancer. It's like a disease. The United States and the Western world were infected during their struggle with all of these other regimes, and the police state is only one part of it. It's just one symptom. And the way that statism and totalitarianism spread, the way they become endemic, there are always going to be people who are corrupt and evil and so forth. That's a given. In order for it to infect a society, it has to have a transmission method. It's very much like an actual biological living disease. And the manner in which it does this is simply to make people afraid. And then it grows upon their fear. It's like the sort of adage that government creates problems and then charges you to fix the problems it just created. Well, the same way, the government creates an atmosphere of fear. And then when people are afraid, they give the government more power. And the government then finds it easier and easier to make people afraid and paranoid and split them down into a million different groups. I go into race in this booklet as well, because it's a very, very important issue within this concept. Within the Western world, people have been broken up along artificial lines such as race, the amount of wealth that they make, because of course the 1% of the 1% doesn't do any work and has most of the money. What you would consider a wealthy individual like a doctor or lawyer is not truly rich. They are wealthy, but they're not really part of that upper elite. They don't have any real political power that any other citizen wouldn't have. This is where it would differ from something like Marxism, in which you have, well, the proletariat that work, and then you have this horrible elite of people that make a 6-figure salary. My God, we've got to tax them more and distribute it to the bottom. If you actually want to help the bottom, you've got to redistribute wealth from people who are a lot higher up than a brain surgeon. So I'll just put that out there. And also, I also call out anarchy for what it is, which is really just mob rule. But yeah, this story is sad, specifically because it is exactly the kind of symptom that we're looking for when we're dealing with an oppressive state. And I also attempt to make it clear how this can be ameliorated. It's not a difficult issue. It's not actually that difficult to throw off a statist regime, especially when you do have the capability of voting. But there are so many people that are wrapped up in a million different conspiracy theories, part of which had been force-fed to them by the government itself as a distraction. And so many people who are cynical or apolitical and either don't care or don't think that what they say matters, that's what's holding us back. And people who do encourage and cherish liberty need to be at the forefront of educating those individuals that being a cynic is just, fucking yourself in the ass, basically. And then you get stuff like this. You get people getting dragged off to court, literally because they made a 4-word long post on Facebook. Meanwhile, you have actual crimes being committed, actual real crimes being committed, where people are not charged at all simply because they happen to be a politician, a judge, a high-ranking attorney, a law enforcement officer, an FBI agent, or something, upper military brass or something, and they don't get charged with anything, and when they do, they get exonerated because they get an army of taxpayer-funded lawyers to defend them. And by the way, taxpayer funds should never be allocated for such a purpose. But that's essentially what they have. And that's one of the, again, just a symptom, but that's one of the main problems within statism. I mean, you've got large, bloated, ineffective government, but take heart, because statist regimes eventually collapse themselves. It's only a matter of time before an oppressive government goes too far, overextends, and literally drives itself to extinction. It doesn't even require people to, protest or revolt, really, because eventually things just become too inefficient. It can't afford itself. Then you have an economic collapse, and then they get replaced, sometimes by other statists. But yeah, it's not available yet. It's still being checked by Amazon. They do all sorts of weird shit with the cover, make sure the format's right and stuff. But everything else is fine, and the format actually was pretty cool. I like the cover that I designed for it because it's formal. But yeah, this story is real friggin' sad. That's about all. Peace out.